Okay, friends, we're back with another supermom. Sheree's with us today, and we've been a follower of her brand and website. And many of us wonder all the time, how do we homeschool? Because we've helped answer the what do I homeschool with? And so we are excited to talk to Sheree. As always, my co-host Lindsay's back. Hello, Lindsay. Hello, Sheree.
Hello.
So let's
Hello.
dive into it. Lindsay, you take the ball. You go first.
Yeah, hi, Sheree. Thanks for coming. I have been following all of your content for a while. I think what would you tell parents who are just thinking about homeschooling for the first time ever and they're having that initial like, can I do this? How do I get started? Where do I begin?
The main thing I always say is trust your gut. As soon as that feeling comes in, there's a reason that feeling comes in. And anytime we think of anything like new or uncomfortable, our first instinct is just to like listen to the fear and start thinking of all the reasons why we can't do it. And then we start listening to other people say what we can and can't do. So as soon as that feeling pops in, there's a reason, like follow that gut feeling.
I love that. And
And
I,
you're
I
based
think
in Texas,
Yes, I'm in
right?
Texas.
And Texas has got a huge community already. Did you already know that before diving in, or how did you discover the local community?
Oh no, I didn't have any idea. I started in 2016, and where I'm at, there wasn't a lot of homeschoolers. So I didn't know anybody who homeschooled. I've never spoken to anybody homeschool. I kind of had like a little house on the prairie view of homeschooling. Like, so I had no idea what it was going to be like. I was terrified, but I just knew I had to do it.
that's awesome. So how did you go about finding community and support in your area?
A lot of Facebook groups.
Yeah.
Finding groups in my area was a little bit harder because we just don't have any, but I live in a nice like area where I'm like an hour from Austin, 2.5 hours from San Antonio and Dallas. So I'll travel if I have to like get groups, and lots of homeschool days. A lot of businesses hold homeschool days. So we would travel to those, and you just figure it out and make it happen.
That's
Can you
great.
share a little bit about your family ecosystem? As much as you can share. How old were the kids when you decided to do it? What was your partner like? Any immediate family reaction? I don't know. Every time I talk about, I wanted to homeschool. My wife was a definite no. She's like, "You're not doing it. Not when we're married. So we're gonna put the kids in school." Um, my brother and even my close friends, even though we all have this gut feeling that we can do a little bit better, we're programmed that this is the best option
Mhm.
and that any other option will put your kids at jeopardy because you're not acting as an educator in this big bad world where everybody's competing to be A+ MBA graduates to even get minimum jobs. And so I'm curious if you can go back in time. What was that like? What was some of those early discussions like?
The discussions went great. I mean, I was very blessed, but my son was 4. He was language delayed, and it was time for me to put him in school in order for him to continue speech services. And I was just like, there's no way. There's no way I can drop him off and he can't come home and tell me about his day. Like, I just couldn't do it. So when I brought it up to my husband, I was more nervous than like, he was just like on board right away. Like, he was like, yeah. But like I said, I was a teacher and my husband was a teacher as well. So he taught for like 3 years while he was running our family business too, just to make sure like we were supported. And we had both seen enough where it was just like, yeah, let's do this.
That's awesome. I know a lot of people worry that they're not teachers when they're thinking about homeschooling. Do you feel like that's been a huge benefit or that it's not overly necessary?
Not at all. I feel like it's hindered me in so many ways. And it's funny, I just did a TikTok about this because like I had to unlearn so much of the like, conform, stay in line, like sit still. And like they were 4 and 2, and I was trying to homeschool for like 8 hours a day. Like I was a hot mess in the beginning. Like, so I had to untrain myself from all of the best thing I got from that was probably making lesson plans, but I mean, you can buy curriculum. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's amazing. Because when I was considering homeschooling, I asked a friend who had been homeschooling for a few years, who was also a teacher, and she was like, your biggest thing will be unlearning what you learned as a teacher
exactly.
for
Yeah.
homeschooling. You're not running a classroom.
Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about your business as we segue into the future version. You've got lesson plans, you've got uh, support for other parents who want to get started. Tell us a little bit about how you're supporting the community now.
Really, I really just want to encourage and inspire scared moms. That's all I really want to do. A lot of moms come to me and they're just like, tell me exactly how to do it, what to do, and I'm just like, you'll find your way. The biggest thing is just having the confidence to know, like, you are your child's first and forever teacher. We've done a really good job of convincing parents that they're not capable of teaching their children subjects, but we're capable of teaching them everything else in life, like how to be a good person, how to take care of yourself. But with subjects, we just, even though the school systems we went through taught us, we should have the capability to teach our own children. So if I if I can teach a mom anything, that's all I really want to do, is just like empower her to remember that she's already her child's teacher.
That's a really good point because one of the things that we talk about all the time um, is that muscle memory that parents forgot. That you taught your kid how to go to the potty for the first time, how to
Mhm.
stand up and walk for the first time, and along the way for them to become an adult, you're gonna teach them so much of life and discipline and lessons. And the thing that we're outsourcing is education that
Mhm.
is defined by a model or a system that thinks this is what's important. Um, if you look at sort of homeschooling as a category, um, it's always had this stereotypical view of it, right? In your opinion, with all the parents you've met and just your own lifestyle, how would you define sort of that homeschooling parent or community now versus what it was before?
I feel like it's like so diverse now because everybody just does things different ways and everybody's just like more accepting of it. Before, I really felt like moms felt like homeschooling had to be like one way, and a lot of it did model like the school system, like the subjects and the way of teaching. And now, like, I've met so many like people who travel and people who like don't even use lesson plans, and I mean just I think it's so dynamic and it's so cool because I'm able to pull from everybody and just kind of learn to do things different ways.
Yeah, that's really great. There's a lot more people picking up homeschooling, and it just creates a much more diverse community, right? More
It
ideas,
does.
more, and I think the more people who do it, the more people feel comfortable doing it, and then it just sort of
Mhm.
Hmm.
accelerates in that sense.
Can
Absolutely.
we break down a typical day for you? So before you were like, hey, I used to try to teach almost 8 hours a day. Now, when you look at, what is your typical home education model look like? If you can walk our listeners
Well,
through a typical day.
oh gosh, every day's different, which I love because I get bored. But like a typical day, we don't wake up early. I am not an early riser, and neither are my children,
That's
which I love. We start school about 11, so we've already had breakfast, or we have a classroom. I love having our classroom. But we go in the classroom and we kind of lay around and we do our schoolwork for like 2 hours, and then we spend the rest of the day meeting up with our friends or going to the trampoline park, or they have to do their chores, or but I mean it's just like a laid back, like, I feel like we're learning all day because we are, but we just have that structured time for a couple of hours.
there's that
So
really
this,
nice like peacefulness to it, eh?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and clearly you don't have a socialization challenge. That's the one pushback we get from almost every. But what about the social aspect? Your kids are not going to have any social engagement if they don't take part in recess.
Well, that's what I said. People act like we lock them in the room and just like slide books and food in there occasionally. Like, no, they're out in the world. Okay. My kids are having conversations with the librarians who's like 75, and then they're hanging out with kids of all types of ages. And we're always out on field trips. And I was a teacher. I could tell you, I said it all the time. We're not here to socialize. I had 45 minutes to teach my lesson. Like, you do that on your own time. So, yeah, that question always comes up.
Yeah.
Man, I think we just got the viral soundbite for TikTok right there. You know, that's that's amazing. We were talking the other day. You know, there's always like this divisiveness that happens. And I've got a lot of great teacher friends, and I've got now through Schoolio a lot of parent friends, and we try to tell people there's not a one versus the other. It's not a homeschooling is good versus public school or private school. We just now have a growing alternative interest
Mhm.
that's got spotlight because homeschooling has been happening forever.
Right.
It's just now on the map due to COVID or whatever it is, and this idea that parents have a choice. So when you're talking to teacher friends, because you're already in the ecosystem and you were on the other side, how are they interpreting this growth in homeschooling? Is it competitive or is it a welcomed, alternative?
I think because they see what I saw, a lot of them just understand it. It's not surprising to me, but a lot of the teachers that I used to work with reach out to me now to ask me like, "Hey, how do I get my kids started homeschooling?" Because I can't. They're still teaching, but they don't want their kids in that anymore. So they see it.
It says a lot that
Yeah,
the teachers are very understanding of you wanting to homeschool.
it's a lot. I was a
Yeah.
special education teacher, and it was a lot. Yeah.
Ask you because you have your blog and you're an influencer on all the major platforms, and you're content creating and coaching. I know a lot of homeschooling moms are looking for a way to supplement their income on the side while they're homeschooling, and how do you balance all of that, and how did you sort of get started in that space?
I kind of fell into it. I like taking pictures, and I started posting on Instagram one day, and I was like, I wanted to do like a diary of a homeschool family. And then
I
that's when
like
I
that.
found out like, hey, brands pay you for this. And they started reaching out to me, and it kind of just like grew from there. But then I was like, if I'm going to be on social media as much as I am, then I need to like be using my influence for more. I need to be helping families more and giving more information away. And if I always say, if you're going to be on social media, you need to be profiting off of it. Otherwise, you're just wasting your time. You need to be making some money. So that's at least what I teach my kids. So then I just kind of slowly started to build it. As far as the balance, it just depends on the day. Some days I'm like, I got it all together and I'm on top of the world. And some days I'm like, why am I doing this? I quit. Like I can't handle it all. But I do know when to like back off. Sometimes I won't work with as many moms, or I'll just take a step back because my number one priority is homeschooling, and I don't let that get out of balance.
That's
I
awesome.
was reading your blog on burnout, and one of the ones that's my new mantra now is I say more no's than yes. And I love that you highlighted it, because we keep saying yes to everything. You're never going to figure out what you need to do. Can you talk about that? Because um, saying no is a new thing as a culture. Like especially when I look at parents, we say yes to everything these little people want all the time. And so,
Yeah.
how did you start to implement some of these routines, and maybe just expand that to just your idea on burnout? Because that's a huge challenge when you start to homeschool.
Yeah, it's really being able to take care of yourself, because if you're not taking care of yourself, then everything else around you is going to fall apart. And that's where I learned no is a full sentence. I don't have to over explain myself. I just have to, because I was burning out so much, and then I was catching myself snapping at the kids, and it's not their fault. Like I've loaded my plate up and I'm not telling anybody no. And so I had to just start saying that boundary. And eventually you just kind of sense like what to say yes to and what to say no to. But I don't, as a recovering people pleaser, it was very difficult at first. But now I don't feel bad at all. I can't do it right now. Like I have to make sure that I keep my cup full so I can keep my kids' cups full.
I love that. And I love that no is a complete sentence. I think we feel really
Yes.
compelled sometimes to we can't say no unless we have a good reason
Hmm.
for that. So good for you. I was wondering about how you measure your students' success or your kids' success. So, as teachers, we're used to report cards and grades and all that sort of thing. Do you do grades for your kids? Do you
No,
not
I
worry
don't.
about
Not at
grades?
all.
How do you
No.
sort of like, I know a lot of parents are nervous about how do I know I'm doing a good job or I'm doing this right? How do you sort of deal with that?
I feel like I'm very non-traditional with that, but we're very heavy on mindset and beliefs in our household. And it's really just if you're trying your best, that's all I care about. If you're trying your best, and then
Mhm.
like let's say they did a worksheet and they got half of it wrong. Well, me writing a 50 on that paper just makes them feel like, okay, I failed. Doesn't serve any purpose. But if we look at it and we say, okay, well, you got half of them wrong, but you got half of them right, right? So what does this show us? We're almost there. We got to work on it a little bit more. And so they're encouraged and inspired to try better. And then next time they might get a 60 and they're like, look, I got 10 more right. And they're excited about getting better instead of being like, oh, I still failed because I got a 60 this time. So yeah, I don't focus on grades at all.
Yeah, I think
I
that's
send
really
this clip to
important.
I send this clip to every South Asian dad. It's like, Dad, I got 92. What happened to the other 8%? That was my
Oh
story growing
no.
up. And I was like, what? I had 72 last time. You said the same thing. But if we look at sort of the external world that's waiting for our kids, right? Where the measurement is very binary. You know, what's your GPA? What's your grade score? What's your letters on a sheet? Um, I like the mindset of sort of not judging them, but
Mhm.
at the same time, there's a world ready to label them and judge them based on their score and their academic, output and things. Um, and I'm talking less from the ecosystem, but like my daughter is an entrepreneur in the making. She's got the most amazing brain that I love without like my dad being her dad. So I'm like, you're so awesome. But she didn't understand that what it means to fail something until grade 9, because up to grade 8 there was no failing, and
Mhm.
then we had to teach her how to not interpret failing as a flaw and
Mhm.
it's just a grade score. But this is a conversation I'm having at 14 or 15 because the system never gave an opportunity to do that. So how do you prep them for life after homeschool when there's the big bad world waiting to label quickly and put a stamp on everything?
Well, I think it comes in stages. So right now I feel like they're kind of being prepped throughout like their other activities. Like when they're playing sports or my daughter plays the viola, she gets very frustrated. Like if she has a recital and she messes up, like she considers that a failure. And we address that. We say failures are just learning lessons. It teaches us, okay, what could we have done this time to make it better? But as they get older, once they get to high school, I will have to start giving them grades. And they're going to have to learn how to, I call it play the game if they decide to go to college. You're going to have to understand that this score matters to these people, even if it doesn't matter to us. We have to make sure that we hit this score for them. But I'm hoping that I've set the foundation now when they're younger, because my daughter's 9, my son's 11, that they don't attach it to their self-worth by that point. It's like, okay, this is a
Mm,
grade, this is what I have to do, but I'm not a failure. I know now how to make mistakes and like, okay, this is how I do better next time. So that's my plan. And I'm hoping it
that's
works out that
wonderful.
way.
That's great. So they're 9 and 11. Have you given thought to high school? Do you think you're going to continue homeschooling for high school?
Oh yeah, definitely. They have
Yeah.
no interest in going to school at all. I've checked in with them. I'm like, have you guys ever considered? They're like, no. Like we have to raise our hand to use the bathroom. Like, no. My daughter calls it
So
prison. I'm like,
weird.
please don't say that because people are gonna think I'm teaching you that. Like, don't say that. Like,
But I love it, man. I love it. My son is 10 and my daughter is 16 now in high school. Um, and I'm also heavy in the music business, so every now and then we'll have a music night and no babysitting, so we'll bring them with us. And we had a show last night, and two kids, both mine, and one is like, "Man, it's 1 a.m. and I don't have enough time to sleep to get up for school at 9." And the other was like, "I'm not going to school. I'm going to sleep in." And my son, he wants to go to school at 9. I'm like, listen, dude, you're in grade 5. It's cool. Like you can sleep in or take. No, I can't miss school. I can't not catch. And then the other one is totally like, I'm not going to school. I'm going to sleep in, So when I look at sort of where the world is headed, and even like, they're living in a global ecosystem now. However, they make friends online, offline, like they're just given a different model.
Mhm.
And most of the time, it's the grown-ups that fight over this stuff. You're homeschooling? What's going to
Yeah,
happen to your kids? Well, my kids are fine.
right.
They're cool. So talk to us a little bit about just parents dealing with other parents who don't agree with that choice. Because if you run into that, how do you create that thick skin?
It took time. I mean, it's easy for me to say now because I've been homeschooling for so long. I'd say like in the first few years, especially because my son, he had ADHD, he was language delayed. So people really were like coming at me like, oh, you're not doing right by him by homeschooling. And it would upset me. Like there were sometimes I was in tears. And I'm just at the point where it's like, am I really going to let the opinion of somebody else who doesn't even live in my household, doesn't raise my children with me, like affect me to the point where I'm not going to do what's best for my child? Like that, there's no way. Like, and it did take me a while to get there, but now if somebody comes up to me and says something, I literally, I just dismiss it. Like I shut it down really quick.
Absolutely. And it's hard in the beginning when your confidence is lower
Mm.
because you're new to this whole idea.
Exactly. You're so
And then
insecure. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. That's why I love there's influencers like you out there trying to empower parents and let them know in those early years when they're the most unsure that
Yes.
that they can do this and that they're making the right decision. And because as veteran homeschoolers, we can look back and we know what it was like to be in those first years, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's great.
So when this content goes out, we're gonna get a bunch of awesome parents from our ecosystem wanting to talk to you, get to know you, and reach out to you. What are the different types of things that you like to talk about? So when we introduce you to our community of over 8,000 parents, you're getting the right folks reaching out you for the right things that you want to talk about.
Oh my goodness. As far as like all of the topics of homeschooling.
Yeah, because you got the call me button on your website. So what are the kind of calls that you like to help out on?
Oh my gosh. Like I talk moms, like I've had moms call me like my mom isn't being supportive right now and I'm really frustrated. I'm thinking about quitting and I just kind of talk her down. Or I mean, it's really anything. I'm kind of just like a support line. Like if you're
We
having a
need it.
hard time or
That's
scared
so
or
great.
like I'm here.
That's amazing. The community needs it so much.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. Because I
incredible,
wish I
man.
had it. Mm.
Yeah, and we tried a little bit of a concierge service in our early stages, and we saw the impact that had, because we obviously we're a startup and we're trying to figure out how do we not only help the community but be in business long enough to help more people.
Mm.
And homeschooling is a new category. There's no blueprint to follow. There's no uh, company that's the villain that we want to be better at. Everybody's building together.
Mhm.
But our concierge calls 99% of the time had nothing to do with what Schoolio did.
Oh,
It was
really?
just
Hmm.
people calling to talk about what they're going through. And we said, wow, this is totally interesting. And we weren't set up for that as a company. And so when we meet folks like you that are already doing it, I'm like, what's the blueprint? What's the content that you share? And how do you, connect your parents? Um, when you sort of look at uh, what's missing in education. Maybe talk to us a little bit about some of the curriculums you use, some of the resources you've put together for parents that are starting.
Well, the curriculum, I make our curriculum. And the biggest thing I think missing is it's not tailored toward kids' learning styles. Like, I learned very early on, I was like feeling myself because I had taught my son how to read, or so I thought. And I was like, okay, like I had introduced him to just like letters, numbers, sight words, and he was just like reading and retaining words as soon as he saw sight words. And then I went to go teach my daughter the same way, and she wasn't getting anything. And we found out my son has a photographic memory. So everything I was showing him, he just was memorizing. So I didn't teach him anything. But then that's when I was like, okay, I have to start breaking down. Okay, so he is a visual learner because he has a photographic memory. And I'm trying to teach my daughter as a visual learner, and she is not. So I had to start doing more hands-on activities. She has to have her hands on things, very tactile. So we always start off with visuals, a lot of games, a lot of interactive activities. And when I was a teacher, that's what I used in my classroom. We played games all the time. I would tell my kids to grab their whiteboards and we'd go outside, getting in nature. I think all of these things are what's missing, like for kids in traditional schooling, is the education just not being tailored to them. And a lot of times it's just boring.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, if I hear that word one more time every single day, oh my gosh, Daddy, I'm bored. I'm like,
Awesome. One of my favorite pieces of content that you have on your website that I saw was the 6 benefits of homeschooling. I think that's awesome for new parents. If you could sort of sum up what is like your number one benefit that you've seen for your kids for homeschooling.
Oh my gosh, number one, there's been so many. Um,
we'll
Or do you
take
have like
3,
a
fine.
why or a mission statement? Like, what is it that keeps you going on the hard days?
I think it's like they have the freedom to find themselves in a safe space. Like they're developing who they are. It's okay to make mistakes. Um, that's the biggest thing. When I was teaching, I taught special education kids for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and the self-esteem I saw in them, it just is what hurt me the most, because they're comparing themselves to all the other kids and they're like, I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough. And to be able to create an environment, because my son was delayed. I mean, he didn't start speaking till he was 4, so of course he's not going to be where the other children were his age. And he got to have an environment to just progress at his pace without feeling like behind or like he was different or bad. And to be able to give them that, I probably say is like the best.
Love that.
That's fantastic and a great way to end this session with Sheree. Thank you so much for being so transparent and open. Our listeners are going to eat it all up because so much of this stuff, we read about it, but it's always nice when somebody shares it through their own life. One last question. Where can people find you and where do you want them to follow you?
I'm on TikTok, Instagram. You can always email me info@shereelanette.com, and my website is shereelanette.com.
Amazing. Thank you so
Awesome.
much. And thanks everyone for listening.
All right, thank y'all for having me.
This is great to meet you.